Hello, everyone. It's Dan King here, as always, from Fireside Strategic. Welcome to our video cast, Humanity Builds Better Businesses, where we celebrate leaders that do transformational work within organizations, helping their clients grow and lead teams with humanity. Today, I'm chatting with Ed Chaffin, founder of the Uncommon Leadership Institute. Ed, welcome to the show, and we'd love you to tell our audience a little bit about what you do.
Thank you, Dan. Good morning, and good morning to everyone who might be listening right now. The simple version of what I do is help people transform and become better versions of themselves and help them look at themselves as a leader from a personal standpoint, the self-leadership, and then looking at how they affect others and looking at that personalized leadership approach. So I work directly with leaders, C-suite, and teams to help improve the performance.
How did you get into doing this?
Let's see, how much time do we have, Dan? Let's see if I can give you the Cliff Notes version. I've been blessed to have a great career, number one. I've helped build 3 companies. One of those companies we took from 5 million to 300 million. And at one point, I took over as president of our largest division, which ended up being about 1,200 employees in 7 locations around the United States. Fast forward 2007. So that run was 1994 to 2008. In 2007, we sold the company. I stayed for another year and then stepped back to say, okay, what's next? Because I was still pretty young in my mind, still am today. And thought, okay, what would the next version of me look like? And voila, coaching and leadership development, leadership consulting showed up. Started my first company in 2009, started the whole ICF certification, became a PCC in 2010. 2014, I did go back into another company as president and with the mandate to help drive a leadership development division and turn around another division that had been failing. And so I did that from 14 to 18, but then 18 stepped down and then reinvented again and launched my next version, which is the Uncommon Leadership Institute. So but what gave me the impetus to do all that, Dan, the simple answer is I saw what happens when you truly live out the mantra of investing in people. We were at a company where I ran the division of 1,200 employees. 800 of those were hourly employees. We were able to build one of the most highly engaged, enthusiastic workforces I've ever been a part of. And so I got to live out what I believed in as far as leadership and saw what happens when people are cared about. Versus what can they do for the business? Yeah, we hope that's the outcome, though, to me, when you invest in people as people. So I saw that work and wanted to continue and help other leaders do the same thing.
I love that. Some leaders haven't had that experience of being in a culture, being with teams where people are truly nurtured. And so it can seem like a bit of a pipe dream, right? It can seem like this sort of utopian world. How do we start to make the case to leaders if they've yet to experience a culture, right, where people have truly been nurtured? How can we make that case to them?
Well, that's a great question. And I'm not sure I've ever been asked that question, Dan, but the immediate answer comes to my mind is a question I do often ask leaders that are on the fence about, do I really want to invest in coaching? Or I'll go, if you were to walk out the door today, what's the legacy that you would leave behind, number one? And number two, would you be supremely proud of that legacy that you left behind? And so the whole conversation about legacy and the impact and the effect that you've had, because again, to me, it's a blessing, it's a privilege to be able to lead people. And if you're doing it just to pad your wallet and to pad your bank account and whatnot, great, more power to you. There's plenty of people that have been very successful doing that. I just have an altruistic viewpoint that says I was put on this earth to invest in others and to help humanity be better versions of themselves. So.
And I think when you come from that place, others can feel it. Perhaps part of the answer to the question, how do we make the case, is to start with that energy, right?
Yeah, you start with that energy about in fact, just a quick version back in the early 90s, I did a lot of mission, vision, values work, both personally and as a family, and I did Stephen Covey's example, his recommendation of imagining my funeral and imagining 4 different people from my life coming before and standing in front of the group of people and talking about who I was. And that's what led me to developing that North Star of doing what I do today, is recognizing that I felt like I was put on the earth to make a difference in the lives of people. So it led me to the mission of changing the world one life at a time.
Yeah. I love it. And I think it's a great answer to the question. And it's one that is working because there's been a new, I think, surge in popularity of exercises like Covey's exercise, future authoring, right, which Jordan Peterson is famous for. At design schools now, visioning exercises are really common. Of course, Simon Sinek's work is really popular. Yeah. So all of this, it's popular because it speaks to meaning, which so many of us are missing in our lives. And it speaks to actually taking the time to sit back and think about, well, I'm not exactly where I want to be. What do I need to do to get there?
Right. Yeah. And so it possibly requires reinvention, which has been one of my memes, if you will, throughout my own career, and looking at reinvention, but also in sitting down with people that have worked for me to say, what would it look like to reinvent?
Yeah. Yes. One of the things that strikes me as I was doing some research for the conversation today, one of the things that struck me is in your reinvention, you weave together different facets of your life. So for example, I think your golf workshop is a really interesting example. I have never seen anything like all of the coaches that I've worked with. I've never seen anything quite like that.
Yeah, it's pretty unique. And unfortunately, COVID has shut it down for now, but we anticipate, hopefully, because this is something I do with my wife. And a little over 2 years ago, she and I went out to Palm Springs and did this for an executive team of 12 people, the CEO and his 11 direct reports, a 1.5-day workshop where we end up the second half of the second day out on the golf course, applying strategy and business to golf. And my wife is an LPGA teaching professional, so she teaches golf. So it was, I get goosebumps honestly thinking about and we just celebrated our 40th anniversary about 2 weeks ago.
Congrats.
That finally she and I were able to do some work together that truthfully, those executives are still talking about that. And there were 4 people on the team that had never swung a golf club in their life. The CIO was one of them. She took up the game as a result of that program. So,
very cool.
So my wife teaches at a private club in Westfield, Indiana, where we live. And so we're hoping that this is the year we'll be able to really manifest that program as soon as we get a little bit past this COVID stuff.
Yeah. Would love to learn. I think it's super innovative. Would love you to tell the audience just a little bit more about it, even if it's not on offer in this exact moment. Hopefully we're getting to the end of this pandemic and we can get out to golf courses. Would love to learn just a little bit. I would love for you to tell the audience a little bit more about it.
Well, so we look at it first and foremost from that personal and personalized leadership format or belief that I have. And I use an assessment that I bring into the workshop, as well as some leadership principles that I've developed over the years. And we teach that and we go through the assessment because the assessment really identifies not only who you are on the outside, but the intrinsic motivations that really drive you. And this is the thing I talk about in it and that I coach to is I'm going to say it one more time, personal and personalized leadership. The example I use, Dan, is my usual style. If I have 10 direct reports, my normal usual style, whether it's affiliative or visionary or democratic or coaching or whatever, it might work for half of my direct reports. The other half might need something completely different for me. So what this enables us to do is to really have those robust conversations about I as the leader of the team and you as a teammate and the other team, how are we really affecting each other as we show up in our teams? Then we go out. So before we go out to the golf course, they are required to come up with strategies. We play a 9-hole event, and each 3 holes simulates the business environment, from forecasting to strategy and tactics, all three. So every 3 holes, it's a different format, and each team gets a stash of virtual money. They can hire my wife as the pro to take a shot for them here and there, or the local pro if we're doing in another course. And so what we have done in the workshop plays out on the golf course as we see the people interacting and trying to determine how they're going to finish the game and win the game. And it's really pretty interesting when we do the debrief, because a lot of the stressors that we see in the team show up out on the golf course.
Okay, but in a lower stakes setting.
Well, I don't know. There's some pretty competitive people. In fact, that event I'm talking about, we literally had to blow the whistle on one team to say, you're holding everybody up. You've got to stop thinking about these next couple of shots. There was some strategy involved in how they were going to end their score, and we just had to go time out, get a move on. You're in business. The doors are closing. You have to make decisions.
Yeah.
So but we also, by the way, what I didn't mention is we do provide instruction. So there's a point in time. So, for example, again, we did this at Indian Wells. My wife contracted with the local head PGA pro there, and the 2 of them did simultaneous teaching, especially for those that had never swung a club. And so the PGA pro was on the driving range helping those people, while my wife was on the putting green helping those people. Then they switched. So they got some on-course instruction before they went out there as well. So it's a really cool event.
Oh, yeah. And when you have teachers of that level of ability, what an inspiration to, as you say, take up the game in some cases, right?
But like I said, the actual how what's going on in the work world manifest that on the golf course, and it's pretty interesting to do the debrief when we get back, and where people say, well, Dan, you remember when we were trying to figure out who was going to hit that next shot? You were putting a lot of pressure on us, that, and you weren't really listening to what I was saying.
I love it. It's ultimately, it may not feel like low stakes. What's great about it is it's a less important sort of competitive context than the one in which people are actually working together. But the great thing is it feels competitive enough that it becomes this simulation. And as you say, the real issues that a team might be struggling with can come out in a more playful context, or at least a context where the outcomes are not as significant. And what a great way to inspire people to do the work that they need to do.
Right. One little anecdote. What we have found in doing the program is that the excellent golfers do far worse in this event than the new golfers.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I was going to ask you, what do you think it is? But so I'll answer your question since you asked it first. Because of their preconceived built-in biases and the things that they believe about golf and how you have to execute on the golf course.
And a beautiful mirror to how important humility is in leadership, right? If you're unaware of your biases, they are going to crop up at the most unexpected moment. They're going to bite you.
Yeah, because they're thinking golf, and they're thinking how to hit that 6-iron, 165 yards on the green, 10 feet from the flag, when the other people who aren't golfers are thinking, well, what's our goal for this hole? It's just a different mindset that the non-golfer has brought to the team, which, is allowing a little more elasticity, if you will, a little more openness to think differently. Whereas that really good single handicapper is locked into, I'm playing golf. They're forgetting that they're actually simulating business.
Right.
So that's the key debriefs we do at the end is, you notice the team that won, there was only one good golfer on the team. The other 3 were pretty new, or had, either new or had not played very much. Notice they won the event.
Yes. Love it. One of the other things that comes up for me about how powerful that is that I think one of the things about coaching and leadership development, it's one thing to have a powerful experience. It's another for that to stick and to produce long-term mindset change. Studies show that emotion and memory are deeply connected. Absolutely. When we can have an experience that is emotionally meaningful and memorable, like playing a very innovative form of golf with colleagues, I think that's more likely to stick. You're going to remember that. It's going to stay with you.
Yeah. I agree. And nothing else to say to that. But I think, yeah, there was one thing I was going to add, Dan, is that what we know about learning and development and adult learning is just knowing isn't enough.
Yes.
There has to be some kind of payoff or effect, or to the point you're making about the research, the emotional connection to advocating for the change in the way I lead or the way I show up. So, again, what if we go down the conversation about unconscious bias? Here's what I tell people: just doing a workshop doesn't change your biases. So just knowing does not change behavior. There has to be some element of emotional connection, but also what's in it for me. Why would I want to invest in changing my thinking about leadership or biases or whatever?
Yeah.
And that's the mistake a lot of organizations make, is they put people through, 1 hour, 1.5 hour training program. They check the box. Oh, we've done the unconscious bias thing. No, you haven't.
Yeah. You are fooling yourself, or you're just trying to paper over something, right?
And in the D&I space, we see that a lot. Now, I think over the last year or so, companies are finally recognizing just doing that is not enough. So, we're seeing commitment to companies that are hiring the inclusion and diversity people and really making a focused effort to get sincere and realistic about changing attitudes and beliefs in the work environment.
Are you finding D&I to be a bigger part of your work and something leaders are asking you for? Or?
The simple answer is no. That's not my expertise. I know Howard Ross, who's considered the guy that put unconscious bias on the map, who wrote I guess about 2 years ago, a new book called Our Search for Belonging. And I know a couple of his consultants from his Cook Ross days. Cook Ross was the consulting firm he founded in Chicago. So I know I have people I refer to if it comes up on my radar. That's just not been something I'm schooled or consider myself an expert in, but I know people. So, but it's huge right now. So.
Yes, no question, it is. And I also love that. I think in our field, there's a variety of subfields that can kind of get squished together. And while there are common themes amongst them, I actually love that for you, it's kind of natural to refer out when it isn't your area of specialization. You have the self-awareness to know what you're best at and where you really want to focus.
Absolutely. So, I mean, when you see people that have been spending the last 20 years doing this work, it's, I'm what's affectionately referred to as a seasoned veteran, Dan. I don't have enough time to add that tool in the toolkit because why, when I know people that are experts in it? So.
Yes, exactly. Going back to the earlier point about adult learning, I think this is such an important theme as organizations are starting to take something like D&I more seriously, but also just starting to take people work more seriously.
Right.
Adult learning theory is really, really instructive. I think can provide us with a lot of guidance as to how to actually produce that longer term change in organizations. So you're right, hopefully the days of the one-time seminar being seen as a panacea. Hope that's done.
I don't think it is, by the way. I think there's a groundswell that's moving to recognizing that adults, like I said, just sitting in a workshop is not how you learn. That just knowing, as adults, we learn in 3 modalities. We learn from on-the-job experiences, stretch goals and stretch assignments. We learn from mentoring and coaching, and we do learn those workshops. So that's in the OD space, the old 70-20-10 methodology. My take on that is, how do we know where to spend the 70? To me, that's another example of personalized. I might need 70% focused on mentoring and coaching versus job stretch assignments. So, I think over the last few years, the L&D space has moved to a 55, 25, 20. And again, that's at least we have a model to look at in recognizing that we're on the same page, that adults learn best over time in 3 modalities. That's the punchline. And if companies are willing to invest in that modality and that methodology, that's where they'll see the biggest payoff. It's sustained learning over time with accountability, benchmarks, measurements. You know, for example, when I do an individual coaching assignment, that is triangulated by their executive sponsor, maybe even the HR business partner. We establish goals and objectives right from the beginning that everyone has agreed to. I just did 2 check-ins last week with 2 executives at the company I'm working in to say, okay, we've been at this for 3 months now. These were the original goals on a 1 to 10 scale. What's the progress you're seeing in that particular person? So 3 months in, we'll do a check, and then we'll do another check toward the end. So, but it's the sustained learning over time. That's why coaching becomes so powerful.
So to help me just be sure that I really understand you here, the view is that in adult learning, there's 3 basic modalities. So there's the workshop that people know about. That's most common. there's coaching and mentoring.
Right. And then there's the job description, on the job assignments, stretch assignments, working on a project, something that takes you out of your normal job description to be on a team maybe that's looking at a new maybe a skunk work project to start a new division or something like that, but just doing something within your own job description that expands your capabilities and causes you to have to grow.
If you're stuck in the norm, you're doing what you're used to doing, you're not engaging emotions like we talked about earlier, right?
Well said. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Really interesting. And oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I noticed one thing in what I just described. There's accountability.
Yes.
There's accountability.
Yes.
If I speak for myself, and I don't grow unless I'm accountable to somebody or something. Yeah. And most of us are the same way. Some of us are better at holding ourselves accountable without the outside influence. But what I've personally experienced and what I see in the work that I do is when we add the additional level of accountability, where we're getting other people's opinions of how that person is showing up, where they're growing, where they're not growing, where there's still areas and whatnot, that just adds another element for intensifying the growth development for that person when we're getting that accountability and that feedback on a regular basis.
Yes, yes. That objective sounding board, right? We have the humility to see that we have blind spots, and someone else is going to be so much better at seeing those than we will.
I've got a good friend who has a great saying. It's hard to read the label when you're inside the bottle. So we need that outside perspective. Plus, what I experience when I'm working with someone who doesn't have that outside accountability is it's easy for them to tell me the stories that they're making up. And I've got no way of validating what they're saying is true or not. I'm a little bit lost, Dan. So,
yes,
as I think about it, I've actually stopped 2 projects midstream because my intuition was telling me I wasn't getting the real story, and I didn't have the ability to go outside that particular person. I actually asked one of them, "I'd like to talk to your board president," and he went, "No." I went, okay. So that was a tell right from the beginning. And then as I think that through, I've got another client. When I asked that question, can I talk to the head of your board? Absolutely. And that has been a 1-year project. He just signed up for another year with him and his team. That's going beautifully, but he was open to the outside accountability for me as well. So I got other people's opinions. So
yeah. And yes, you stopped the other project, but that's really a good thing because you automatically figured out, this isn't going to get anyone great results.
Yeah, what I saw was there had been some progress, but I thought that was as far as I could take the person without any outside feedback. So I just, we'll just leave it at that.
Well, one other just subject area I'd love to dig into with you, because you just mentioned it now, is intuition.
Yeah.
I think a really, really interesting tool in the toolkit that probably doesn't get discussed often enough. Curious sort of what you think it is, because different people define it differently. And would love to hear a little bit about how you use it in your work.
Well, I think it's a gift that I was given. I've always believed that I had high intuition. So that's the start of it, right? Your belief system. But I have enough evidence to back up the belief that it's true. And Dan, I don't want to get too spooky here, but I call it the voice. I literally hear the voice tell me something, which then causes me to start asking different questions or become more curious about other things. And, I'm not always right, but most of the time it does lead to bigger discoveries. And I've got some pretty compelling stories. I'm not going to share them here today where, I've had that gut, that intuition that says, follow this trail. And in one in particular, I'm not going to tell you what I heard, but 3 hours later, it showed up. It took 3 hours staying with these two business partners. And I was whiteboarding all kinds of things about secure-based leadership and personalized leadership and all this stuff, and just kept asking good questions. And finally, literally 3 hours after I heard what I was hearing, boom, it showed up. And it was a pretty amazing event. So what I've also discovered, what I think is true, Dan, is that some of us are afraid of our intuition. A couple of people recently where I've asked them those questions, because I'm in a mastermind group of 15 other coaches around the world. And because I'm that seasoned veteran, they called me Yoda on the last call, but I'm mentoring and working with some of them one-to-one. And that was a couple of them recently where I really encouraged them to tap into that intuition, not be afraid of it. And to listen to the voice, listen to whatever they're sensing or feeling, and become really curious, and not make us, what you don't want to do is go, oh, I think I picked up on something, so I'm going to make a statement. You don't do that. You stay the course, be curious, ask great questions, feedback what you're hearing, and oftentimes it'll manifest.
Yeah.
So I think it's one of the differences in my coaching, I think, with most other people, is because I think it's a pretty well-honed talent or skill or gift, whatever you want to call it, that I've been blessed with.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And I think in some ways it's a bit of a secret, sort of forbidden topic. When it comes up, we can feel perhaps other people's fear around it.
Right.
It has a connotation of being kind of woo-woo.
Oh, yeah. And especially for those people who are very logical and very, systematic in their, process thinking. So you really have to judge your audience about how you expose that, I can think of a couple instances where I've never said the word intuition to a couple of people because I just felt like it would spook them. But, you go, it seems to me, let me ask you this question. And so
Well, luckily with our audience of human-centric business leaders, I think you're in a safe space and you won't be judged for it. But if,
thank you.
At any rate, really, really, I think a great sort of substantive note to end on, and maybe a last question that I'll throw at you. We've had serious conversations about business, about leadership, about adult learning. Love to end on a fun note and learn, when you're not doing this kind of thing, you're not doing the important work in the world, what do you do for fun? How does Ed Chaffin relax?
Yeah, been doing a lot of it lately. I cycle. I used to be a competitive cyclist a long time ago. So my standard line, Dan, is the older I've gotten, the faster I used to be. I play golf. My wife is the pro. I'm the hack. I like to run, walk. I like to work out. My wife and I, we've been living in Florida for the last few months. We love to go to the beach. And when things open back up, one of the first trips I'll be taking would be back to Napa Valley. We'd love to go to Napa and go visit the wineries. We got a few favorites there. So those are just a few things. But, friends and family, we love to hang out with friends and family. And we have an epic 4th of July event that occurred last year that we'll reproduce again this year, which that's a whole nother, that'd be a 30-minute conversation. But it involves karaoke and rum chata and a few. So cornhole, a few other bocce ball, in our neighborhood last year. So anyway.
That sounds like a ton of fun too. Ed, been a blast being with you. I think just beyond the great insights that the audience will get, really just love how down to earth you are and how you approach all of this. I think it's a fantastic gift. And so been such a pleasure being with you today.
Same here, Dan. You're a great interview. I appreciate the forum and the time with you today.